Alright guys, BLM here back with a new video, and in this video, we're back with an amazing race casting video, somehow. Get my first one forever, but obviously we are in a spot where we are getting a Big Brother Amazing Race season, so I decided why not do a casting video for an Amazing Race Survivor season, where I'd like to thank Radio Ranger for my Twitch chat on this video idea. And again, I thought this was a solid idea here, essentially make the Survivor version of the Big Brother Amazing Race cast that we're getting. So I'll be honest, I very much struggle on what exactly to make this video, as I do think something that is a struggle with making these like blood versus water or like relative related videos is the fact that I don't know these people. Like, I only know what obviously is brought up on shows through family visits, and again with Survivor in particular, obviously we haven't gotten as many recently, to where this did make this a bit of a harder task to put this cast together, to where I very much struggled with the idea of, do I make this a cast of all Survivor players, as I feel like that's obviously a much easier task to do these kind of like duos from Survivor, or do I stick to the original concept and again try to do a cast of Survivor players with their loved ones. And to be fair, they didn't really fall down the season itself, where we do have Taylor and Kylan as two alumni together. So I'm essentially saying screw it and doing a mix of the two, where again this ends up being a cast that really just mixes those two concepts, where a majority of this cast are players and their loved ones. Mind you, even a lot of those loved ones have reality TV experience, though there also are just pairs of two Survivor players. So again, it's going to be kind of a mix like that. Either way, I just wanted to put together a cast here that I thought would be a fun grouping of teams to put together. Also teams that I think that I could actually see the Amazing Race casting. And through that, again, we do have a lot of potential teams here. Now, also, I very much struggled with just the concept of how exactly to put this video together and like how am I going to be running through these teams. I decided to just, again, try to go chronological order based on the Survivor player themselves and when they first played, again, to try to keep this somewhat structured. But either way, like the Amazing Race Big Brother cast, I try to make this 13 teams. Also, again, tried to make it a bit more diverse in terms of the type of dynamics that we're getting, not make them all just romantic relationships or siblings or anything. Again, I tried to make this as diverse as possible, but either way, let's start off. So again, we'll go through in chronological order, starting off with Survivor Borneo, where not many true considerations of people that I think they would actually bring back nowadays. The only true consideration here was Jervis with Marissa, who he was on Blood vs. Water with. And while Jervis is someone that I could definitely see them casting for a season like this, I just did not feel like they were a top priority here. You have a decent amount of contenders from Australian Outback. I did consider Jerry Manthe in this spot, I guess, with her sister Jennifer, who is her loved one in Here's Villains, though again they didn't make the cut. I also considered Colby with his brother Reed, because again, that'll be funny. Yeah, they didn't make the cut. And also I did consider Tina with their daughter Katie, and again, both Survivor alumni. But again, I just wanted to not make the cast entirely just both teams of both Survivor alumni, to where Tina and Katie were definitely considerations. Yeah, I kind of went with another pairing over them. Yeah, a team that I actually did put on that has some correlation to Australian Outback, I already kind of going against that concept of having two alumni, I ended up putting on Rob and Amber. And this is a little bit of a weird one, as obviously, again, they are Amazing Race alumni as well. They are two-time former racers. Also, again, storied Survivor alumni. Rob and Amber, I feel like, are a team that I feel like they would definitely try to get. And also, I do think they are gettable at this point. I mean, Rob was very recently talking about reminiscing about the Amazing Race, and again, Rob's kind of out on the concept of playing Survivor again. Yeah, I do think there's definitely a world where Rob and Amber would be coerced into doing the Amazing Race again, and I do think a cast like this just feels like the perfect opportunity to do so, to where, while it does feel weird considering they are like literally a team that has already been on the Amazing Race, I feel like they are definitely some of the bigger ticket items here for Survivor alumni, to where again, decided to put them on. Next, moving on to Survivor Africa, where again, some considerations. I consider Big Tom and his son Bucky Bo. Yeah, ultimately, I don't feel like Big Tom would be a top priority for them anymore, and also is a bit older in age. And also, I did consider Ethan, probably with his wife Lisa. That'll be kind of weird considering Ethan also is an Amazing Race alumni, but now it'd be a different partner. But ultimately, again, I did not put him on. Didn't really have a true consideration for Survivor Marquesas. I mean, Vesepia and Sean would be a really cool pairing to see back, but ultimately, again, did not go with them. From Survivor Thailand, I did actually consider Sheehan, where I know she very publicly came out with her relationship where she's dating a guy like half her age, and maybe that would be a dynamic that Amazing Race would want, though ultimately I didn't put them on. Next up for Survivor the Amazon, and I did put someone from Survivor the Amazon on, and what a shocker, it's Rob Cesternino. The question was, who do I put Rob Cesternino on with? And again, this is definitely one that would be debatable in the sense that I don't know if they actually would pick Rob. However, again, we know in the past that he was considered for the reality showdown season with Stephen Fishback, though they ultimately turned it down. To where, again, I considered him with Steven again here, yet again, to try to keep it less alumni focused. I did end up going instead with him and his wife, Nicole, who I also think would be really fun in The Amazing Race. I think would have some fun banter and be bickering along the way. And again, just to see Rob Cesternino back on TV again, even though in Traders, but still, again, to see him on The Amazing Race too would be cool. To where, again, I don't know if he would necessarily be a top priority for them. Again, I would like to see it. So again, I personally put him on the cast. Next, I'm moving on to Pearl Islands, where again, I do have another team on here. Now, again, considerations, I did consider like Andrew Savage, potentially again with his wife or daughters. Yeah, again, did not put him on. Also considered Rupert and Laura again, because again, it would be funny. Yeah, again, I just felt like Romber was probably the more important team there. Person I did end up putting on here is obviously the queen, Sandra, and put her on with Nina. And I think that'd be a lot of fun. Obviously, Sandra ended up appearing on Australian Survivor with Nina. Nina ended up being a 2-time Australian Survivor player. And again, I think this would be a really good spot to bring Nina into American TV, to have her on The Amazing Race with Sandra, where, again, I think Sandra's definitely someone that they would consider for a season like this. And I don't really have any other daughter-daughter duos. And again, I felt like Sandra and Nina just feels like the most obvious like daughter-daughter duo to put on here, to where, again, I considered Tina and Katie. But again, I feel like 2 Survivor US alumni was a bit weird. And obviously, again, Nina is a Australian Survivor alum, but I don't feel like they would mention that on The Amazing Race, to where, again, I think for them, Nina is a newbie here. And I think that definitely helped them in this spot, to where, again, I do think Sandra and Nina would be a pretty good pick for this spot. Next up for Vanuatu, the only team I really consider was Eliza being back with Corinne. Yeah, ultimately, again, didn't want to bring back too many former teams, so again, they did not make the cut. They have a couple considerations for Survivor Palau, particularly Stephanie LaGrossa with her husband, Kyle Kendricks, who I know is a baseball player. And I think they're definitely a consideration. I don't know how likely he is to want to do it. Though, to be fair, I mean, I think they probably are a more likely duo to be on here than Rob and Nicole. Yeah, again, I just rather have Rob and Nicole, so I didn't put Stephanie and Kyle on here. Also, I did consider putting on Ian Rosenberger here, probably with his wife, where I know he actually originally applied for The Amazing Race, so maybe there's a shot he would be willing to do that. Yeah, ultimately, again, did not go with him either. For Survivor Guatemala, I do think there's a couple pairings that would be fun, though there's no way they're ever picking them. But again, Jamie and Rainey, like Jamie and his twin, I know we're in the running for Blood vs. Water. Yeah, again, don't think they would make the cut. Judd and his wife Kristen would also be funny, though don't think that would happen. And Cindy and her twin sister Mindy would be a lot of fun too, especially with Mindy also having a lot of reality TV experience now. Yeah, don't think they would pick them. Next up for Survivor Panama, and somehow I have 2 pairings from Survivor Panama making the cut here. So people I consider Shane with his son Boston, where I know Shane has said that he would never do like a Blood vs. Water season of Survivor. Yeah, again, this is obviously a show where they'll be working together, and I feel like, again, he'd probably be more apt to do this, so I just don't know if they'll pick him. And also, I did end up considering Aris and Vetus, where, again, another one where I didn't want to put too many alumni on. Plus, also, I don't know where they necessarily stand with Vetus after he went home early in Cambodia, along with the fact that Aris also just seems to be kind of out on reality TV. So again, I did not put him on. The people I did put on, though, I think you got to have Sari Fields. I mean, I think that's obvious. The question is just who she paired with. Again, you could pair her up with any of her sons. You could pair her with HB. I just decided to go Jared. I just feel like it's the easiest option. Do I need to see Jared back? Not really. But I do think, considering, and he already is a CBS alum at least, and they already have a pre-established relationship from another reality show, I feel like they were the easiest pairing to put together here. Though, again, I could definitely see the argument that it would be like one of her other sons or would be HB, but I think definitely Sari would be here, and through that, again, she would finish the trifecta, so that'd be cool. So again, easy pick there. And the other person I put on Terry Dietz here with his son Danny, again, having a father-son duo on the race, which I feel like they would typically like. Also, again, they have an interesting storyline with Danny obviously previously being sick, which led to Terry having to leave Survivor Cambodia. And in general, I just feel like they're the type of team that you would expect to see on The Amazing Race. While Terry, I don't think is like a super high priority for CBS to bring back to TV, I do feel like this actually feels like a pairing that just feels very Amazing Race coded. So again, I put him on. Next for Cook Islands, I didn't put anyone on here yet. Again, considerations. I considered Candace and John Cody, just another one. Again, another alumni pairing that just didn't make the cut. I did try to get Penner on this cast, probably with either his son or daughter. Yeah, I really just don't know much about them, where again, did not put him on. Also, I considered Parvati, where I know Parvati was originally supposed to be on The Amazing Race. Yeah, I just don't know who her partner would be here. So again, she didn't make the cut. And also, I did consider Yule, probably with his wife. Though again, I just don't know how likely Yule is to say yes to The Amazing Race. But again, they were definitely in consideration. Next up for Survivor Fiji, and again, I consider Earl, just to try to get Earl back on reality TV, probably with his wife. Though again, they did not make the cut either. Next for Survivor China, and I really didn't know who to pair up here. I mean, I considered Courtney and I guess her husband. I just don't know anything about him, so again, I didn't put him on. And there are other people that are contenders like Amanda, Todd, James, PG, and people that could be brought back. Yeah, I just don't know who to pair them up with. So again, I didn't put any of them on. I had a couple considerations for Survivor Micronesia. First up, I did consider Tracy Hughes Wolf with her daughter, who I believe is a singer, and maybe, but ultimately they didn't make the cut. And also I did consider Natalie Bolton and her sister, who I believe is a Real Housewife, or maybe they would try to get them on because of that, but ultimately, again, they did not make the cut either. I legitimately did not consider a single person from Survivor Gabon. I don't know, maybe you can consider like Penny and his sister, who I know were in the running for Blood vs. Water, but again, like, I don't think anybody here is making the cut. For Survivor Tocantins, I did have a few considerations. No one made the cut though, but again, Tyson is someone I considered, probably with Rachel. But again, another just alumni pairing. I just think there's other alumni they would go to over them. Coach is someone I considered here, probably with his wife, though again, would be really funny if it was with his assistant coach. Yeah, again, they didn't make the cut. Taj is someone I obviously considered with Eddie George. Yeah, again, I don't know if she's clamoring to do reality TV again, so I didn't put her on. Also, I did consider Erin, who is married to a former hockey player, to where maybe they would go for her, but again, did not put her on either. Now for Survivor Samoa, again, a couple considerations. Laura Moret and Sierra would be really funny. Again, to see the daughter that voted out her mom on The Amazing Race. And genuinely, I was actually like pretty close to actually putting him on, but I ultimately didn't. And also, I'll mention Russell Hantz probably in this spot with his brother Sean, just because, like, I don't know if there's another Hantz that they would allow him to go on the show with, to where I guess I consider them, but again, they don't feel very Amazing Race coded. Next up for Survivor Nicaragua, I really only had one true consideration. It was Holly with her daughter Alexandra, who I know is like a pageant queen, though ultimately I don't think they're top of mind more. From Survivor Redemption Island, I guess considered Grant with his wife Christina, who I know is an actress, though I don't know if they would go for them, along with also Ashley, who married like a former basketball player. So I actually do feel like they feel like a team that would be on The Amazing Race, though I ultimately didn't cast them here. For South Pacific, I did consider Keith and Whitney again, because maybe that'll be funny, but ultimately didn't go with them. Also did not go with Edna with her sister Debbie, who I know were in the running for Blood vs. Water, though again, they didn't make the cut. And also considered Sophie Clark with, I guess, her husband Bobby, which I wouldn't be opposed to, though again, just did not make the cut. Next up for One World, where I very much considered Monica and Brad Culpepper, where again, if this was a more alumni focus, if this was just a straight up just all Survivor players, I do think Brad and Monica would have made the cut here. Yeah, ultimately, again, I just felt like otherwise they just simply didn't make the cut here. I consider Troyzan and his brother Todd, who I know are in the running for Blood vs. Water, though I doubt they're top priority nowadays. Consider Kat and her cousin Robbie, because maybe that would be funny, but again, I don't know how interesting Kat is in the modern day. And also, I consider Kim Spradlin, probably with her husband. But again, do I need to see Kim Spradlin on reality TV again, especially in a non-social strategy game? Probably not. Next up, moving on to the Philippines, where I did consider Abby Maria. I don't know who to pair her up with, probably her boyfriend, but again, she would be fun on the show, but ultimately didn't go with her. I considered Malcolm and his brother Miles, who could be interesting, though did not go with them. I also considered Lisa Welchel, probably with her brother Justice, just because it would be funny. So I could definitely see him wanting Lisa Welchel for like the name recognition, though ultimately I didn't go with her. Next up for Caramoan, and no one from Caramoan was really in consideration. I guess like Reynolds and maybe his wife, but again, no one's particularly close. I could just really skip the entirety of Blood vs. Water, because I essentially already talked about the Blood vs. Water pairings through talking about their relatives, but let's get to Cagayan, where I did consider Bryce pretty heavily in a couple pairings here. I considered him with Jatia, I considered him with Wendell, though again, just another spot where didn't pick them because this is an alumni focus, where otherwise I think I would have had Bryce and Wendell on. I know I had them on my like reality showdown cast I made a while back, so I think they would have made the cut, but they didn't make the cut here. Also, I did consider Sarah and Tony just for the sake of it, because again, would be funny, and also just the concept of Tony on The Amazing Race would be insane. Yeah, again, did not put him on. But then we move on to Juan del Sur, where I did actually put a pairing here. Now, again, a lot of considerations. Now, a big one was obviously Val and Jeremy. I was very close to putting them on. Again, another one of these that if this was a full-on alumni season, I would have had them both on. And even otherwise, I actually considered it, considering like how much do they really remember Val being on Survivor. Yeah, I was very close to putting them on. I ended up going with a certain other pairing over them. That is, again, not both alumni, though I could definitely see a world where Val and Jeremy would be the picks here. But beyond that, I did consider Drew and Alec, just because, again, that might be a funny dynamic, though I didn't put them on. I also did very much consider Kelly Wentworth, though I didn't really know who to pair her up with. I considered Dale, I considered Lauren O'Connell if I was going alumni. I considered her husband, though ultimately, again, just did not fit her onto the cast. Also, I considered Anna and Jacqueline because they're still together, but didn't put them on. And also, I did consider Baylor and Missy because why not? But again, they didn't make the cut either. The people that did make it on, though, I did put on Natalie Nadia, which again, a bit of a weird pick here, considering they are Amazing Race alumni. They are actually originally Amazing Race alumni that later went on to be on Survivor. Yet, I would love to see them back. I think it'd be a lot of fun. But obviously, this goes against my entire thing of having less alumni on the cast. But again, I think if you were to have a team of both alumni, I do think Natalie and Nadia would make a lot of sense here. Again, from the make their way back to the Amazing Race would be a really interesting journey for them. So again, if I am going to break that rule for another team, because I did it for Rum and Amber already, I do feel like Natalie and Nadia is a fun team to do that for. So again, they made the cut. Next for Worlds Apart, and really the main consideration was So and her sister Do, but I don't think they're making the cut here. Also, I considered Mike Holloway with his wife Meg from Big Brother 17, which is still probably one of the most random pairing in reality show history, but a spot where I don't know where they stand on Mike Holloway. I know Survivor production is not particularly high on Mike Holloway nowadays. I don't know how CBS is as a whole. I know he was like in the running for Challenge USA at a point, so again, who knows, but ultimately again, did not go with them here. Oh, wrong, I had a few considerations. Now, I know that Beast Mode Cowboy and Ty were in the running for their original reality showdown, so I considered them here, but they didn't make the cut. I also considered Ty and his husband Mark, and Mark the Human, and again, they were in consideration. I went with a certain other pairing over them, and also I did consider Michelle and probably her sister Kim, though I could see where they also go with Evan Walker from The Challenge, her boyfriend at the time of this recording. And I think all those were considerations, but none of them ended up making the cut. From Malaysia Gen X, I did consider some pairings. I considered Chris and Brett again, considering it seemed like they liked them on the Amazing Race reality showdown, so again, maybe they would bring him back, but doubt it. I also considered Zeke and his husband Nico, who obviously is a big actor, and it would be a pretty big get here, though ultimately I don't think Zeke is clamoring to do reality TV again, and I don't know if Nico would accept anyway, so again, didn't put them on. I also considered Jay and I guess his probably sister in this spot, though didn't put them on. And I also considered Adam with multiple pairings. First, potentially his wife, Kaylee, who I know has a big social media following, so maybe they would want them for that. And again, that pairing in particular was like very close to being on the cast here, yet didn't make the cut. And also, I did consider Adam and his brother, though they didn't make the cut either. Next for HHH, and again, a few pairings here I did consider Lauren Rimmer and her sister Sunny, who do seem like a pretty Amazing Race coded team, yet did not go with them. Also considered Dr. Mike with his wife Mary, because it's going to be kind of funny, though they didn't make the cut. Also considered Devin Pinto and his mom Sonia, as I know Devin was talking about how he wouldn't play Survivor again unless it's blood versus water, and he plays with his mom, so or maybe he would do Amazing Race, but I doubt they would want them that bad. And also I did consider Ben with his wife Kelly, who again, he constantly talks about as like having saved his life, and maybe Amazing Race would want that sort of story, yet ultimately did not go with them either. Next for Ghost Island, and really the only pairing from Ghost Island I considered was Dominic and his wife Kristen, who I think could be fun here. I actually debated putting them on here over Rob and Nicole, though personally I would just rather have Rob and Nicole, though I could definitely see where Dominic and Kristen get closer to being on the cast itself, considering Dominic's probably a bigger name alumni-wise for CBS, but still, I would rather see Rob and Nicole, so I put Rob and Nicole over them. Next for David vs. Goliath, I did put one team from David vs. Goliath on the cast. Now, the only true consideration outside that was Christian with his wife Emily, though I don't know how reality TV coded Emily is, where again, if we're going alumni, I thought about Christian and Gabby, though again, that wasn't happening either. And beyond that, you consider like Angelina and her husband. I didn't go with them. The team that I did put on here, though, is Mike White. I guess with his partner Josh, I do think Amazing Race would want Mike White back. Obviously, again, Mike White is originally an Amazing Race alumni, but also a Survivor alumni, and I think, and obviously Mike White was talked about as a big get for Survivor 50, and I think they would try to probably get him again for the Amazing Race, and again, it seems like he's willing to do reality TV again, so maybe he would say yes. The question is just who to partner him up with, where obviously his dad has passed away in the years since them being on the Amazing Race together, and so again, he would need a new partner, and again, I decided to go with his partner Josh. Now, realistically, it's really just anybody, because I think obviously the person that they want here is Mike White, so I think you can really just find him any pairing and it'll be fine. But for this specific video, I ended up landing on him and Josh, also adding in LGBTQ representation. So again, they made the cut here. Next for Edge of Extinction, and again, a few considerations here. Now, again, the team that was really fighting for that spot in the cast with Mike White was Ron Clark and his husband Lloyd, who I actually think I personally would rather see more so, as I would love to see Ron Clark back on TV. And I feel like this actually feels like a very Amazing Race coded team. Yeah, ultimately, again, I think the name appeal of Mike White would put him on the cast over Ron Clark here. Also, I considered Rick Devens and his wife Becca, though, again, another one of these like kind of like Christian and Emily, where I just don't know how reality TV coded Becca is. Also considered Chris Underwood and his wife, though just another team that, again, was not a top priority. Next up for IOI, where I actually had a decent amount of considerations here. I had Jack and Elizabeth, who obviously have gone on to get married, though I doubt they would be wanting to do reality TV again after IOI, so again, I did not go with them. I considered Elaine with her partner, though they didn't make the cut. I considered Lauren Ashley Beck with her husband. I actually feel like Lauren feels very Amazing Race coded, yet I didn't go with them. And I also considered Nora with her sister Lana, which would be kind of insane to have Nora on The Amazing Race, though again, none of them made the cut. With that, we now transition to the new era, where, as I said before, it is actually pretty difficult to figure out these pairings for new era, considering, again, we stopped getting family visits, though, again, obviously, I do think the majority of teams would come from new era based on precedent, where, again, the Big Brother teams are from very recent seasons. I feel like the Survivor version would do the same thing, though, again, considering the limited information I have, I couldn't really stack this cast with new era. So still, about half the cast here ends up being new era. Survivor 41, I'd actually put on one pairing on this cast. Now, considerations, as of a few months ago at the time of this recording, I know Sarah Wilson was dating David from Survivor 48, so again, I considered that as a duo. Yeah, they didn't make it on. I considered Sydney, as I do feel like Sydney feels very Amazing Race coded, probably here with her brother or her boyfriend, though again, didn't make the cut. Nasir is also someone that I think feels very Amazing Race coded, and again, considering him probably his wife, though they didn't make the cut. If we're going full-on alumni, Shannon Ricard would be an incredible duo. I think that would be really great TV. Again, they didn't make the cut, though the team that I did put on, again, definitely one that is debatable here. I did put on Danny McRae and his wife Kiki, and again, for me, this was the team that was fighting with that Jeremy Val slot, and I ended up giving it to Danny and Kiki because, again, I wanted to have less alumni on the cast, though obviously Jeremy and Val would be bigger priorities. Sure, if I wasn't trying to do that, I definitely would have gone Jeremy and Val. Yeah, Danny and Kiki here. Again, Danny was picked for the Challenge USA, so I mean, clearly there's someone at CBS that wanted to bring him back, and again, considering how much he talked about Kiki on the challenge, I feel like this would actually be a pretty fun pairing, so I decided to bring him on here. And next up for Survivor 42, where literally half of my new era returnees come from Survivor 42, which is really funny, mainly because I feel like this is the cast that we probably have the most outside information on in terms of their loved ones, but really every team that I considered here did end up making the cut. The only consideration was really a team of alumni with two of the people on the cast, though, again, we'll get to that. But again, the people that made the cut here. First up, I did put on Zach with Corey, where obviously they were in the running for the Big Brother Amazing Race edition, where they were alternates there. However, again, I think it's funny to put him on the Survivor version, where, again, it feels more ridiculous considering Zach was literally a first boot of Survivor 42, to where, again, at least Corey made it pretty deep onto Big Brother, so it makes more sense that he would be on the Big Brother edition. But still, I would love to see Zach and Corey on The Amazing Race. I think they're very inspired casting choices. I think they would be really fun on the show. To where, while, again, it feels ridiculous that we have Zach Wartenberger being a Survivor rep on The Amazing Race alongside Boston Rob and Sandra and Suri, I still feel like this would be a really fun team to see. So again, I went with Zach and Corey here. Also from Survivor 42, I did go with Omer. And again, as I said before, I was very much considering Omer paired up with Marianne, which again, if this was an alumni season, that would 100% be where I go. Yeah, again, trying to keep it less alumni focused, I ended up going with Omer with his sister, Javaria, who has made a name for herself on Jeopardy in the time since, to where, again, maybe they would want that appeal. And really outside that, I don't really have a brother-sister dynamic on the cast, so it adds to that as well. So ultimately, again, I would love to see Omer on reality TV again, and I do feel like him with his sister here makes a lot of sense. And with that, again, we get to the other 42 alumni, that being obviously the winner of the season in Marianne. But here with her husband, Connor. And to be fair, Connor's one that I'm not entirely sure how much he would want to do reality TV, even though I know he's a big reality TV fan. But still, any excuse to get Marianne back on TV, I think would be a lot of fun. I also feel like Marianne just, again, feels very Amazing Race coded. And while, again, me personally, my dream team would be Omer and Marianne together, I still think having both of them on the race at the same time would be really fun. And again, to try to add more non-alumni people to this cast, I do feel like having Marianne here for her husband makes a lot of sense to me. Next up for Survivor 43, and there were a few considerations. No one made the cut. I considered Noelle, probably with her, I believe, now fiance, where I feel like Noelle definitely feels very Amazing Race coded. Yeah, again, ultimately she didn't make the cut anyway. I also consider Sammy with Zay from Big Brother, just because, again, it's another CBS alumni to mention, though, again, did not go with them. Also, again, as an alumni pairing, I did consider Cody and Jesse, as I think that could be interesting. And really, in general, I tried to get Jesse on this cast. I just didn't know who to pair him up with. And ultimately, again, they didn't make the cut. And also, I did consider Owen with his wife, Sammy, who I watch playing Blood in the Clock Tower quite often. I think they would have a fun dynamic on the show. Yet, again, practically, again, not very likely to happen anytime soon, considering, again, they're having a kid. But really, outside that, while they might make my personal cast, I do feel like, again, trying to make this semi-realistic, I do feel like there are probably other options that'll be picked over them. Next up for Survivor 44, and I had a few considerations here. All alumni pairings that didn't make the cut. I consider Bruce and Katura, because again, that would be funny. Though again, they did not make it on. Matt and Franny, I think again, if this was an alumni season, I think can definitely make the cut. Obviously meeting on the show, still being together. So again, I think could be a good fit for Amazing Race, though they didn't make it on. And also I consider Carolyn and Jam Jam, because again, that'll be funny, though they didn't make the cut either. Now for Survivor 45, and I do have a pairing here that made it on. A big consideration was Kelly Nalbandian and and her partner Gabby. And again, they were very close to making it on here. Probably would have actually gone with them if I didn't go with the other team from 45. Again, they didn't make the cut. I also considered trying to get Emily Flippin on this cast, probably with her husband, but they didn't make the cut. Also considered Austin with his girlfriend Amanda Probst, Jeff Probst's niece, which is probably a viable option. Yeah, I kind of just wrote them off. I don't know how her being Jeff Probst's niece would affect the casting of this. Yeah, again, did not put him on. And also, I tried to get D on this cast. I considered her with Julie if we were going alumni. And even without that, I considered putting her with Johnny Bananas, but I really don't need to see Johnny Bananas on The Amazing Race, so I ended up not going with that. The team that I did put on here is a team that recently announced they were dating at the time of this recording, and that team is Sabaya and Katura, who were obviously both on Survivor 45, and at the time of this recording, and revealed a few months ago, they're now dating. And again, it feels like a very Amazing Race coded team here. Obviously adding more LGBTQ representation to the show, both being very fun, bubbly personalities, and I think being very code for an Amazing Race, to where, again, while I said, again, I didn't want this to be so alumni focused, I feel like the fact that this was at least a pairing that wasn't really on the show. Again, they obviously didn't meet on the island and have a completely different dynamic that you wouldn't see from what you got from Survivor. I think that was good enough for me to end up landing them on the cast here. Next up, we got Survivor 46, and again, a few considerations. None of them made the cut. Most of them are alumni pairings. I think the only one that wasn't an alumni pairing was Q, paired up with probably his wife, Emily, though they didn't make the cut. Outside that, I considered pairing up Q with Jelinski because that could be funny. I also considered like Tevin and Hunter as a potential duo. Ben and Charlie could be a duo. Really, none of them end up making the cut here. Next up for 47, and same thing, no one made the cut, though I had some big considerations here. I did consider trying to get John Lovett on this cast, though again, it's just a spot where I don't know if he would say yes. It'd probably be one of his podcasts co-hosts. Yeah, I just don't know if they would be willing to say yes to this either. Beyond that, I did consider like Andy with his girlfriend. I think that was a consideration. Genevieve with her husband Mark. That was a big consideration. Actually, one that I thought would actually make the cast coming into this, though they didn't. Again, I considered Sam and his wife, Rachel and her husband. Again, a lot of considerations like that. Yeah, none of them ultimately made the cut. And finally, move on to Survivor 48, where I did have one pairing make the cut here. Now, again, all the considerations were alumni pairings, because I don't know these people. But I considered like Thomas with Shaoqin. I considered like David and Mary. I considered Cal and Camilla, because they're always going to shove that down our throats. But the team I ended up picking here is another alumni team that is even more shoved down our throats. I'm picking Joe and Eva, because I do not see a way that they do a season like this and Joe and Eva are not paired up together, because I think they clearly would want them together. They obviously have a big story coming from Survivor. They brought probably one of the most viral moments in recent Survivor history. Joe's a massive casual fan favorite. I just think this is a no-brainer. They would clearly put Joe and Eva on a cast like this, to where, while again, I did not want to make this so alumni focused, I feel like at the end of the day, I kind of had to put them here. But there we go. I mean, that is my Amazing Race Survivor Edition cast. Now, running through it again. The teams I did have were Rob and Amber, obviously a married couple, Rob Cesternino and his wife Nicole, Sandra and her daughter Nina, Suri Fields and her son Jared, Terry Dietz and his son Danny, Natalie and Nadia, Mike White and his partner Josh, Danny McCrae and his wife Kiki, Zach Wertenberger and his brother Corey, Omer Zahir and his sister Juveria, Marianne Okech and her husband Connor, Sabaya and Katura from Survivor 45, and Joe and Eva from Survivor 48. So again, that's my Amazing Race cast. Again, kind of like a weird mix match of a lot of concepts together. Or again, maybe down the road I'll do like a solely alumni focused one, as I actually do think that would be a fun concept as well. Yeah, again, I did want to try to make this as similar as possible to the actual Big Brother Amazing Race cast that we're getting at this point. So again, that's the cast. Now, be honest, again, just expect more of the same style content from the channel. But for now, that is the video. Thank you for watching.